Mercury, Jupiter looks mean. Oh, fuck. What are we going to do? Please tell me, 'cause I thought that you knew until we do. Best of luck at this genetically modified baking duck. Saying everything is fine. Conglomerated media keep us all in fear. I'm getting so fed up that Armageddon out of here. But where am I going to run? I feel naked and I don't own a gun. Please help me. Give me a kiss and some allegedly organic, whatever that is. We got more social media than money. We got more guns than we got jobs. And the main thing that tells us that a man is important is how many people he robs. We got more misery than mercy. We got more pain than we got skills. And the main thing that tells us that a country really matters is how many people it kills. And they think that they won't pay some bills. Must be on pills. Gives me the chills when I see them heading for the hills. For the hills. For the hills. Server that'll hide my ass. I optimize my searches and I'm going first class with language in a matrix that makes me a star. And I'll find you and I'll friend you wherever you are. Oh boy, I can't wait for what's next. I'm here. Come on and send me a text until you do. I'm so nice. I'm having vegetable curry and basmati rice. We're 2012 in, right on, and it is grand. We're 2012 in, come here, give me your hand. Incandescent opportunity for all of us to shine, awakening together in a universal mind, creating a community to liberate the earth. Sing it into beauty at the moment of our birth. Let's dance, because we all know the tune. United in the music of the moon, and for us all, there's no fear. The cosmic grand opera begins right here, right now. 2012, it's here, it's coming for you. 2012, it's coming at you. 2012, it's coming with you. 2012, it's coming at you. 2012, it's coming at you.
Good evening, and welcome to Contemplating the Universe. That was Dan Furst singing We're 2012in, and I think we're still 2012in. My guest tonight is Dan Furst, who's an astrocartographer. Let me introduce you to Dan. Hi, Dan. Are you there?
Yeah, Leslie, I'm here. Hello.
Okay, we have a little bit of a funky connection, but that's fine. You sound like you're in outer space.
Well,
but that's okay. You are, sort of. You're up in the mountains. Dan is joining us from Peru. So before we get into the presentation and the questions, let me just introduce Dan to you. Dan has been an actor, author, astrologer, and ceremonial artist in New York, Japan, Scotland, India, Indonesia, Hawaii, and Egypt. Many of you know him from here in Egypt. His Universal Festival calendar has been published since 1998 on the Hermes 3 website. Dan has 2 books, Dance of the Moon and Surfing Aquarius, and I highly recommend these books. There are links to them on the blog and on Dan's website. He also has a blog called Aquarian Airlines, and he has a new website, which is www.danfurst.com. His website has made him one of the world's most respected experts on mythology, sacred calendars, astrology, prophecy, and our communal evolution into spiritual consciousness. And I'll give you all the links at the end so you can connect with Dan and you can see his website. As a moon priest and medicine theater clown, Dan has created ritual theater at Earth festivals worldwide. He's played Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn, and the Green Man. You saw him there as the Green Man in the slides. The Holly King, Pan, and other roles. He's also the first actor to ever play the beloved Sufi poet Rumi. Dan lived in Egypt from 2004 to 2009 to sing in the sacred sites and the Nile Valley and Sinai, and to test firsthand as a singer and soul healer the resonant properties of these spaces as acoustic chambers for vibrational medicine and soul attunement. Earlier this year, Dan and I guided a Sacred Sounds tour here in Egypt, and he also assisted me with my Return to Pachamama tour in Peru last year, and we'll be doing another Return to Pachamama tour this July 2014. The dates are the 11th to the 21st, and that's also on my website. Right now, he lives in Peru, in Pisac, in the Sacred Valley, which is near Cusco. And he's working on new books, and some of them are e-books on astrocartography, which is what he'll be talking about tonight. Dan and I met back in 2003 when he came to Egypt for the first time. We had been emailing, I think, for about 2 years before that. And he came, and we met, and then he moved to... Less than a year later, he moved to Egypt. And as I said, he was in Egypt from 2004 to 2009, and then he went to Peru. Let's just get into the talk. So Dan is going to begin with talking about astrocartography. So Dan, why don't you just tell us what is astrocartography?
Okay, Leslie. I will, and thank you for that introduction. Good heavens, I'm going to have to reincarnate as an opera star just to deserve it. So I'm just honored, Leslie, to be on your program and to connect with you again as one who has been such a beloved mentor and friend to me now for 10 years. And so to answer the question, astrocartography simply means map making by using the stars. Everybody knows that cartography means map making. In essence, what it is a way of taking the planet positions in a person's birth chart and then also taking what are called the angular positions of the chart. That is the 4 points at the left, the right, the top, and the bottom that correspond to our personal creative pursuit of our intentions in the world, to our positions and behavior in relationships, to the spiritual dimension of our life, and to the material dimension as well. These are then projected onto a world map so that when you see your world map astrocartograph, you notice a great number of lines passing through, some of them vertical, some of them forming sine curves. And each line represents a different planet or one of the nodes of the moon. And naturally, as many of our viewers and listeners know, there are money planets, love planets, family planets, parenthood planets, education and learning and healing and teaching and creativity and the pursuit of spiritual path planets. The lines that represent these things go along different places in the world, so that what we can do when we do a reading is that it's possible to zoom into the world map in order to identify places where our prospects are strongest for whatever it is that we intend. This system was created back in the 1970s by a genius astrologer named Jim Lewis, Lewis, who sadly passed away a few years ago while he was still only in his 50s, and he had so much brilliant work still left in him. He pioneered this system, calling it astrocartography, and presenting it originally on his site, astrocartography.com. And so I would say that Jim and the others who were his contemporaries or his followers coming soon after him were like the first generation astrocartographers, in the sense that their emphasis was always on, or almost always on, where are my best places in the world? What are the places that are best for me? What are the places that I should avoid? Whereas as a second generation astrocartographer, my emphasis is different. I want to help people, of course, to find their best places if they're interested in relocating to another place. But I am mainly interested in relationships, because most people are happy where they are. They don't want to move to another place just because they have good planet lines there. But the point in astrocartography for people like that is that the lines can tell them where important relationships are located for them. If they are looking for investors, if they are looking for colleagues and clients and publishers, if they are looking for healers, if they are looking for a love partner, the lines can show them other parts of the world in which that person may have been born. And you don't have to go there to find them. If you have a great Venus line in Shanghai, China, you don't have to travel there to find the man of your dreams. In fact, I'd recommend against it. You see that person and take in a big breath of air, and good heavens, the air is so poisoned you'll be harmed. But the point is, if you meet a person who was born under one of your Venus lines and that person invites you to dinner, it would be a good idea to give him a few minutes of your time. This is uncanny how this works, and how often the lines in the maps can connect people with places at a distance from where they are, where they have excellent relationships waiting for them, as we'll explore here as we look through some maps for Leslie and me and a few others. The thing I believe that was most important about the appearance of astrocartography when it came is that it arrived really not very long before the formation of the World Wide Web. It arrived at the birth of holistic medicine in the 1970s, and it has come now on a time when we are more mobile on the planet than we have ever been before. We are traveling not only in physical space, but in psychic space. We are forming more relationships with more people in more places on the world than we have ever done before. Therefore, astrocartography is one of the tools that can give us a profound sense of our interconnectedness with people everywhere. Is it an accident that it is so important now? I believe not, because as everyone knows who is listening now, we are in a position right now where forces of domination, manipulation, and control are doing everything that they can to control us, to divide us, to keep us in fear, to keep us in ignorance, to keep us in conflict. And so the better the understanding that we have of interconnectedness with people everywhere, the more it will be possible for us to align communally in a spirit of love and to achieve the responsibility and the joy and the role of evolution into spiritual consciousness that we have come here together to play at this time. I feel that astrocartography is very valuable for helping people understand their role in this, and that is why I love my work and I am very passionate about doing it.
And I think it's important what you said about the fact that you don't actually have to live in these places, because sometimes you can't. Some people just can't move, or you don't want to. But I think that's important, because I know the first time you read for me, that was kind of what was in my mind, was where would be a really good place for me to live. And then the second time you read for me, it was more about connections with people, which was easier. I mean, that made more sense to me. So I think that's an important point, that you don't actually have to go to these places. And as you said, with the internet and all, it is important to look for people that are in those places. In fact, that's how we connected. You had found my name somewhere, and I was in Egypt, and you did actually come, but
that was actually
yeah.
So I mean, one example is I have a client who's a photographer in New York, and he's got great lines in Switzerland, especially Geneva. And these are great lines for creativity, for business, for commercial success. Now, he doesn't want to go and live there in Switzerland. He likes it where he is in New York, but he's been exploiting the energy and the possibilities of his lines by developing relationship with art galleries and art dealers in Geneva, and it's booming there. He's selling as much of his work there as he does in his home market of New York, New Jersey. He doesn't have to go over there, but being aware of it and having relationship with it sure is helping his life.
And that's something that's hard to know. Like, how would you randomly go send your work to Switzerland or something? So I think that, it's important to have a clue as to where these places might be, and then you can pursue them.
So it is funny, Leslie, how so many people are more psychic about this stuff than they realize.
Yeah.
Because it happens so often when I read for people and I show them where their good places are, they say, that's exactly where I want to go. Yeah. That's exactly the place I have in mind. That's exactly the place where this opportunity has just popped up for me. Amazing how often.
But then it's good confirmation. That's the other thing, is that I think a lot of times we are tuned into something, but you might have a lot of things in your head. So I think having something a little more concrete, or something you can look at, and it's kind of there in front of you, so you can see it and get an idea, or it makes more sense to you when you actually see it in front of you.
Exactly, yeah.
So Absolutely. How is astrocartography different from, like, astrology chart reading?
Well, with an astrology chart, they are related. They use the same data. But with an astrology wheel, as you know, you're looking at a circular design that looks kind of like a pizza with 12 slices. And each house in the pizza is occupied by different planets. And so we work on what kinds of house positions the planets have, where the angles of relationship are between the different planets. I always am looking for how the house positions of the planets will indicate the relative importance of different areas on the wheel within the sacred contract, the soul contract that we've come here to carry out in this life. But you see, while the astrology chart is very, very good for helping us identify our talents, our tendencies, our strengths of character, our weaknesses of character, and our relationships of different kinds of capacities and limitations that we have. And we can put our charts together with other people's charts to see how well or with how much difficulty we're going to get along. And we can trace planets' positions in real time as they're moving through the zodiac. and we can tell, therefore, what the timing of things is likely to be in terms of difficult or easy planet relationships. But the one thing that the astrology chart cannot do, at least do it in a way that is easily understandable for a person who does not have extensive knowledge of astrology, is that it shows you your life in the dimension of space. The astrology chart is showing you your soul contract. It's showing you your life mainly in the dimension of time. And there are ways that, yes, astrologers can use a birth chart in order to relate things in there to places in the world. But clearly what astrocartography is doing is much more immediate and compelling by giving people maps that they can look at in these fascinating diagrams with the planet lines. So that is the one thing that astrocartography really can do that an astrology chart can't do. It can make the locational possibilities and information available in a much more easily understandable and compelling way.
And do the lines in the maps change, or they stay the same all through one's life?
Well, it's like an astrology chart, Leslie. As you know, an astrology chart is basically going to tell you something about your abilities, your tendencies, and so on, that are there as part of your personality or as part of your soul makeup that apply for your life. Though, as we know, the chart itself can be worked on. It can be transcended. There is no condition in the chart that cannot be changed for the better with the right and persistent effort. However, the maps are basically the same. The map lines that you see in the maps affect you in that way for life. They offer you these possibilities or these challenges no matter when in your life you may go there, though the experience of being there may be easier and more difficult depending on the planetary conditions of timing that apply when you go there. But yes, I mean, one chart that I recently cast, a synastry chart and an astrocartography map, was for a couple who wanted to get married in August of next year in Mill Valley, California. So I chose for them what would be really the best day in Mill Valley according to the alignment of planets on that day. And so in that way, yes, I mean, a person who is interested in getting married and starting a company and taking some other kind of important step in their life may be interested in doing that. When I lived in Egypt, I did astrocartography for a company that was one of the sponsors of the World Cup. And so I got from the man who was working with me the dates and times and places of the matches that the Egyptian team would play, and was able to tell him, I think your team is going to win on these days and lose on these days, and you will not get beyond the initial round. So we agreed it would be better to invest the company's advertising money in the weeks when the team won, which is what they did. So those are a few examples of how you can make the lines work for you in more specific, immediate ways at exact specific times.
So it's probably a good idea to do both at the same time, to do the astrocartography and the transits at the same time.
That's why the astrocartography readings I do, I think, are so much in demand. I hope it's not immodest to say that, but the astrocartography reading includes some reading of the soul contract as I perceive it, and also of the conditions of timing that affect that person, usually, for a span of maybe 2 years ahead, because good heavens, beyond that, we don't want to, 3 years ahead may as well be on the moon. We want to know what's happening 3 days ahead. So,
exactly.
Yeah, but yes, it does include both things. That's why it's like 2 readings in one. I very rarely do astrology readings anymore, Leslie, because why would anyone just want to do that when for a little bit more you get all these maps as well? So everyone chooses the astrocartography.
And what are key lines? I mean, are these different than planet lines?
Ley lines. You see, the difference between the planetary lines in an astrocartography map and ley lines is that ley lines are universal. They connect points on the planet, and people who are sensitive to the telluric energies in these points and flowing between them are very, very conscious of the ley lines. But they're universal, and they connect specific places. Your astrocartography maps are completely different because they're individual for each person. So if you go to Glastonbury Tor, well, you're in a place where two ley lines intersect. You're in an extremely powerful energy vortex, but you may or may not have anything in your astrocartography map that relates to Glastonbury at all. If you do, obviously, and this is why I recommend that some people travel there, if they've got powerful planet lines going through Glastonbury or going through any other sacred site, then in effect they are aligning their own strong planet lines with the ley lines that are in that place. So they do tend to have pretty powerful experiences in those places. And I advise many people who are interested in doing that kind of spiritual travel to sacred sites to not only to align their own planet lines with the site itself, but to determine the best timing for their visit there.
And you said earlier that you don't necessarily have to live under your good planet lines to benefit from them. No,
not a bit. I mean, maybe it would help, Leslie, if we look at a few slides here, because then people will be able to see specifically how this works. Because the first slide that I have here, which is where I am living here in Peru, you see, is an example of how to use your lines to choose the place where you want to be. But then the other two that I'm going to look at after this, and one of your slides too, are for places that we don't live in, but we go to because things are really favorable for us there. We have something to do there. And so this map that you see of Peru is mine, and it's a fairly typical astrocartography map. As you can see, there's an arrangement of lines on there. One of them, the purple Uranus line, is vertical, pointing to the bottom of the map, meaning that this is the material dimension of my life. And all of the other lines that you see here are pointing to the west, which is the direction of partnership and relationship. So this means that this is a zone that is extremely favorable for me for the forming of partnership and connection. Specifically, I don't want to talk about all of these, but the ones that are right in the center, the green Chiron line and the yellow sun line, are excellent for one's health, excellent for coming to terms with whatever wounds we are carrying in our life and working those out. The sun line is excellent also for health, creativity, vitality, leadership. The lines in the maps are powerful and influential for a range of about 300 miles. Those two lines that you see there, the yellow and green ones, are about 20 miles apart, and I live right between them. So I have chosen this place very consciously in terms of this very, very powerful energy that is available to me here. Now, 3 years ago, when I was working on my second book, Surfing Aquarius, or 2 years ago, rather, I spent the rainy season, the winter, up in western Peru, where you see the purple and blue lines crossing each other. And I stayed in a beach resort up there for 3 months, and that was where I finished my second book, Surfing Aquarius, and sent it off to the publisher. And those lines represent your unique, magical, good luck zone on the planet, where you gain success, money comes to you easily, you make connections with powerful and influential people. The time gap between conceiving an intention and manifesting it shrinks to nothing, so you can take on the appearance of being a miracle worker. So I wanted to test out this zone, and it did work that way. I did very well up there. And the other line that is related here, too, you see, is the green one out there in the ocean. Even though it's not on the land, it's still influential because it's within 300 miles of that place, or 500 kilometers. Now, here's the interesting thing about this, you see. If you follow these lines to other places, you are going to find that they have harmonics to them, you see. So what the next slide that I've got here for Dan, New England, shows the same set of lines that we've just been talking about, except for the purple Uranus line. That one is out of frame now to the left, but the yellow, green, royal blue, and other green line are all up here. They are enclosing the city of Boston, which is where Red Wheel Weiser, my publisher, is located. And so this is an example of using your lines to target specific locations that are advantageous to you. So that when I had a book proposal to send, I chose the publishers, naturally, who were in New York and Boston, who were within this arrangement of lines. But Boston was better because it gets the benefit of all of these lines, whereas New York only gets the ones that are over there at the west by New York. So Red Wheel Weiser bought the book. And so if you have a book to publish, it sure is advantageous to know where your lines are that are excellent for finding publishers. Here's another example.
So on that slide, in that slide that you're showing, so those lines are active. The sun and the Chiron and they're all active from both sides. Then, so you're saying Boston is in the middle of them. Okay, absolutely. So that's quite a distance.
Well, it's not as big a distance as it looks. I mean, if you figure the state of New York is about 400 miles or 600 kilometers wide, that Boston is right within range of all of those lines. New York, the different places clearly have their advantages. New York was advantageous for me in other ways when I lived there before I knew anything about astrocartography. Yeah. But those lines will also refer, especially the Jupiter line, to higher education, you see, because that was where I went to Columbia University in New York. It's practically right under that Jupiter line. And did a lot of writing, did a lot of work in show business there, which was also appropriate to those lines that have to do with self-expression and communication. So absolutely, yeah. I mean, the line doesn't have to be right on the place, but it is helpful if it is close to it, or ideally if the place is between an assortment of parallel lines that are powerful. I'm moving to another place here, you see, because now what we notice is that the same lines are present here in this area of north-central Europe, in Germany and in Poland, enclosing the Czech Republic and Switzerland and so on. These lines here are the same ones, and now they are pointing to the bottom of the map. And so this is a place where naturally the effect of this line, of these lines, is going to be happening on the material plane. And it's interesting to me, you see, even though I've only been to Germany once in my life for only a few days, I have lots of German clients and read for them all the time. So this is another example of how you find lines that are in specific places that benefit you. Especially places like especially Munich and Frankfurt, those places which are so close to those Jupiter and Mercury lines. So there's another line, however,
and all the way up into Scandinavia. Maybe you need to go north.
That's right. Well, yeah. I mean, I hadn't even mentioned that, Leslie. I also have a lot of clients up in Norway.
Okay.
More than I have in Sweden. I've got a lot of clients in Denmark.
I was going to say Denmark it's right between those.
Yeah, you see. And really, after I saw you the last time in March when we were guiding that Sacred Sounds group in Egypt, I decided I was going to travel those Sun and Chiron lines that you see there, the yellow and green ones. So I went through Greece into Hungary, then over into to Prague, to Austria. So I was traveling the whole time between that whole complex of really wonderful lines. And so whether you want to travel, whether you're looking for business relationship, for potential markets and so on, whatever you're looking for, the lines can assist you perhaps in gaining some sense of what's there. Now, here I've just moved suddenly to Leslie's map. Okay, now this is Leslie's map for Egypt. And how interesting is this, you see, because as you can tell, Egypt here in Leslie's map is a very high energy zone. And in particular, the Nile Valley is very strong because it's surrounded by, at close range, by three lines. One is that green Mercury line that you see going close to Aswan and then up into Sinai, pointing to the west. So it's no wonder that Leslie has so many active and successful relationships in the field of communications, because that's basically what that line favors. To the west of the Nile Valley, there are two lines running congruently. One of them is a Jupiter line, the blue one that's pointing to the top of the map, which means that this is a place from which Leslie is going to project her message, her intention, her philosophy, her teaching, very likely to a wide audience on the planet, and that she will gain the support that she needs for projecting her message out into the world. This is the same Jupiter line, which is a publishing line, that I showed you in Boston, only my line there is pointing in a different direction. And so here the effect is the same. The other line that is congruent here, interestingly enough, you see this is a Mars line. And you see the red arrow on the Mars line pointing to the bottom of the map. Mars lines are challenging. They are inherently conflictive because they involve the energy of Mars the warrior, who wants to take what he wants, and if it does not come to him immediately, he's ready to fight for it. So this is going to be a challenging location in some ways on the Earth plane. It will be difficult in some areas to live and to move there. Leslie has the enormous courage to be living and doing what she is doing in an environment that does not very much favor creative and spiritual work by women, especially foreign women who are gathering the energies of Egyptian and other women together into something like the Cairo Center for Sacred Arts. So it's no wonder, you see, that Leslie is very discreet about revealing where the center is, revealing where she lives, and so on. So, I mean, any man who has some experience knows, obviously, you never give the location or the phone number of a woman away without her permission. But here, it's pretty evident. This is a place in which one needs to step carefully. And Leslie has learned and adjusted the art of doing that. The other line, the lines that you see there out in the west or out in the desert, that's a yellow sun line, which is farther away from the Nile Valley, but it's closer to Alexandria up there at the top, and to places like the Siwa Oasis. And so these are places that also would be very favorable for her. So and this clearly, you see, interestingly enough, just as Peru is a relationship zone for me, because I've got so many lines with arrows pointing to the west, clearly this area of the Middle East and North Africa is a relationship zone for Leslie too, because you notice how many lines there that are in and near Egypt are also relationship lines of the same kind. So we can do the same thing here, you see, that we've done in my maps now, by going over here to Peru. Now, how interesting, you see, because Leslie was born in Lima, which was a place that was likely to kick her out. You see, this is not her easiest location, because there's another red line going there through Lima. It has the symbol of the planet Pluto on the top, which means that this is a line in which we are likely to come into contact repeatedly with things that shake our belief system and shake our ego structure and incline us to move and live in a different way. You remember where my strong lines were down there in the area of Lake Titicaca, which is that blue patch that you see in the middle of the map. Actually, the lines that Leslie has are a little bit farther from the zone of the Sacred Valley in Machu Picchu, where we spent most of our time. And this is probably just as well. You see, the area where we were was within range of the gray moon's node line. You see it faintly going parallel to that sun line to the top of the map. It has a horseshoe-shaped symbol on it. This is a line for spiritual community. And so no wonder Leslie was engaged, as she has been, as she will be again, in leading groups here to do ceremony together, to connect with the spirit of Pachamama, and so on. And so, but as you can see in the map, I think it's only a matter of time before groups will go not only to Peru, but down to Lake Titicaca and the Island of the Sun and Tiwanaku, which is right between La Paz and Lake Titicaca. There is some powerful energy down there, mainly in Bolivia, but also close to Peru. So,
well, and I have those two same lines that I have going next to near Cairo.
Exactly. You know, so here the Jupiter line is pointing to the east, which means that this was an important adventure and project for you, in the sense that it was something new that expanded your ability to lead and do these things, you see, and has begun a process of doing that. And the Mars line pointing west means it's not necessarily a conflictive or difficult line in this case. What it does mean is that you are engaged with other people, because that is a relationship line in an experience that does have some challenges to it, and which therefore requires some courage from the different participants, as this one certainly did. Hiking through mountains here and in areas where it was physically strenuous to go, though not really so bad. Fortunately, next year, instead of doing the trip in May, we'll do it in July, when it is cooler and it is easier to travel through these places at that time. But yes, you see, these are examples of ways in which people will live in one place under one set of lines, and they'll connect with another place that has the same lines in a different alignment, which means that these places are harmonic with each other. And I know one amazing woman here in Pisac, an Australian woman who is a very successful blogger, who has got the same cluster of lines in her native Australia, in Europe, in Peru, and in Hawaii, and she has developed business and contacts in all four of those places. No wonder she is so successful. So let's look at a little more. Should we, while we have some time, should we look at a few more? Here's a fascinating one. This is Robert De Niro, the famous actor. And this is his map for New York, which is where he was born, in the Bronx, in 1943. He turned 70. He just turned 70 last August. Now, as you can see, New York in his map is a place that's so far away from anything that there is no energy there for him in that place at all. As a person of talent and ambition, he will feel that he's in a place where nothing is really pushing his interests forward, nothing is pushing back against him. It would make more sense for him to be in another place where there's some energy available, where he feels like something is happening for him. And so rather than talk about the specific lines here, the thing that is really more interesting to observe is that in the place that he was born, in the place where he started as an actor, there's nothing there at all. However, when we move to his next location in Los Angeles, look at this, okay? This is his map for the lower part of California. Los Angeles is in the middle of an area which is framed by the blue Jupiter line to the right, going very near to San Diego, and up toward and up there towards Santa Barbara, which is within very close range of Los Angeles itself. There is a red Mars line crossing a red Pluto line. Generally speaking, while I avoid saying, oh, these lines are good lines and these lines are bad lines, any more than I would want to say these are good planets or these are bad zodiac signs or anything like that, the fact is some lines are easier than others, and some lines are more challenging than others. The blue Jupiter line is the great abundance line in the whole map, pointing down to the bottom of the map. This means that this is a location which favors this person for becoming very wealthy. I have a client here in Cusco, a doctor from Toronto, Canada, who's got this line going right through Cusco and has created the kind of life that you could expect a person to be able to achieve under that line. Though, of course, the line doesn't guarantee anything. It depends what we do with it. But he has become a Peruvian citizen after being here for 13 years. He's created a successful, lucrative practice. He has bought land. He's built one house on the land. He's building another house for visiting colleagues and patients coming for long-term care. In other words, he has created under that line a life that is extremely advantageous and lucrative on the material plane, which is clearly what Mr. De Niro has done in his career as a Hollywood actor. There is, however, a price. And there is the nexus of those two red lines, because with the bright red Mars line, the one that angles diagonally coming through there, pointing to the east, this means that this is a line, a place that is going to demand all of the courage that one can possibly summon for purposes of living in and succeeding in an extremely competitive and difficult environment. Interestingly enough, you see, it would be appropriate, too, because Mars, the warrior, represents potentially the domain of violence in our lives, that he has played so many characters from the mob, so many people who were engaged, who live in this violent culture, that so many of his roles have been of that type. The red Pluto line going down there means that this is a place that is going to transform him considerably, turn him into a different kind of man, especially where his basic actions of survival on the material plane are concerned. So it is no wonder that he is what is called an intensely private person. He guards his life very closely. He is notoriously unwilling to give interviews, as many of our listeners will know. The planet Pluto is the ruler of the sign of Scorpio, which is the most secretive planet on the wheel. So even though, interestingly enough, he is one of the most famous actors in the world, nobody knows anything about him. So this is an example, you see, of how we can go from one place which just has nothing for us and go to another place which has a lot of possibilities for us, but also is likely to extract a price. It's going to require that in order to get the benefit of being in this place, there are things that we are going to have to do. So as a courageous Leo actor, he has risen to the challenge here. And here, let me go back to that map until we're ready to leave it. So, interesting stuff, all right? This is a little sort of a bit preview of one of the books that I'm working on, which is the Astrocartography of famous and successful people on the planet. And so this will be one of the interesting stories that we will be able to look at in there.
So the direction that these arrows are pointing that tells us if it's more advantageous or whether it's more challenging. If it's pointing to the east, it's something that's a bit more difficult.
Well, I would say, Leslie, you have a more difficult line somehow in Cairo than Mr. De Niro has in California, because your Mars line in Cairo is pointing down to the bottom of the map, and while his line in California is pointing to the east. It's not as though the direction of the line is necessarily more or less advantageous. The direction just identifies the dimension of our life in which that planet's energy is at work. In De Niro's map, you see, interestingly enough, he has the same Jupiter line that you do, Leslie, but it's pointing to the bottom of the map. So the benefits of the Jupiter line are going to be more material in his case, whereas the Jupiter line in your map points to the top of the map, so it's aiming instead at the spiritual dimension. So therefore, it favors you much more for the publication of spiritual material and for the spreading of a metaphysical message in the various ways that you do that. So let's look at another one here. This is an interesting case too, of a woman who tried to gain her objectives in one place and found herself doing them a lot more easily in another. This map is called Model because it is the map of a woman who works as a professional fashion model, and for many years, or not many years, maybe 3 years in her life, she tried very hard to make it as a model in Milan, in northern Italy. Now, as you can see in this map, Milan is in a vacant area, which is basically neutral between the blue Venus line that you see over there in France and the other two lines, the purple and green ones that you see going through Central Europe and down into Naples. So after she had really not had much success at all in Milano, she accepted an opportunity in Paris, and boom, everything changed completely. Because in Paris, she is very close to that blue Venus line pointing to the east, which means this is how she achieves her successful self-expression in a profession that is related to art and beauty. And so her life changed completely in that sense. Paris cannot get enough of her, even though Milano was not too terribly interested. So let's see what else we might have here. Yeah. And we probably do not have that much more time here, but this is a map for a guitar player who I know, who is here in South America, talented young American musician. So as you can see, the area in the center of the continent has that dark red Pluto line going through there, but the area of Peru has a Venus line, a blue one going to the bottom, and over there, Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, tremendous cluster of lines, a yellow sun line pointing to the bottom, a blue Jupiter line, Leslie, the same one you have in Cairo, pointing to the top, and a green Mercury line also pointing to the bottom. So he is now, you see, basically in a neutral area. He's here in Pisac, where I am, which is sort of between those lines in Lima and in the middle of Bolivia. So this is a nice place to be, and he's doing valuable things here for his spiritual evolution, but for purposes of what he's doing as a musician, there is not much happening here, but there could be a lot more happening for him in Lima, including the possibility of new love relationship, you see, because there in Lima, there's a Venus line that also goes all the way up through northwestern Peru up into Ecuador and Colombia and so on. So there, this map is loaded with possibilities. And another interesting thing, I think, right as we're coming to the end of the hour here, that would be naturally of interest too to a lot of your readers, is the position of that moon line. If you look at eastern Brazil, the eastern tip of it, the line is hard to see, but if you look sort of to the top of the map above the easternmost area of Brazil, you'll see an arrowhead up there with the moon on it. We haven't talked much about the moon lines because they represent our emotional life, they represent motherhood, they represent birth. They also represent relationships of different kinds with the feminine, which is why, interestingly, see, when clients want to know where is the best place for them to give birth, I look for their moon lines, especially a moon line pointing to the bottom of the map. In this case, the moon line there in eastern Brazil is pointing to the top of the map. This is the goddess line. This is the line that really, whether we are female or male, shows us the place where we are likely to encounter the experience and the perception of the sacred feminine within ourselves and within others. And so naturally, people who are pursuing that path in their lives will be interested in that particular moon line. So I think this may be the last of the slides that I have here. No, here's another one for Mr. Guitar. Okay, this will be the last one, but here you see again how lines can shift and different lines can be present in different places. The best possibilities for him are in the eastern United States and in Kingston and Jamaica, because you see that same Venus line that he's got in Lima is going right up through Jamaica, practically right through downtown Kingston, going through Cuba, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, all of that area, whereas the West Coast, does not favor him at all. There is a Saturn line, a Neptune line, a Uranus line, all of them pointing to the west, meaning in summary, this is a place in which we tend to enter into partnerships and relationships that are unequal, in which we give a lot more to the other people than we're getting back from them. That's the effect of that Saturn line. And in addition, we have trouble with dishonest partners. We had better have an excellent agent negotiating for us in any place that is near to that pink Neptune line pointing to the west. So this is why, where his prospects in the United States are concerned, the LA music industry is not really the best idea. It would be better for him to develop his possibilities elsewhere. So how wonderful. Well, these are all the slides I have, Leslie.
One other question about your readings. Do you do readings for couples and families and business teams? I mean, groups as opposed to...
I mean, I do readings for couples. I do readings for business teams. I do readings for all kinds of combinations of people. I mean, naturally, if I'm going to do an astrocartography reading for a person, the first thing that I will ask them is, are you married or in an important relationship? Because if you are, I strongly suggest to read for both of you. That way I recommend places that are good for you both, and I don't recommend places that are great for one of you but terrible for the other. And the same thing applies to business partners too, you see. I love to read for families of children who are deciding when they're in high school which of the offers they're going to accept from the universities that they're interested in, because you can use the lines for that too. I've done many of those where I can tell the student and his or her family, all right, you can go here to Wisconsin and you can spend 4 years enjoying parties, and you may not be able to spell university by the time you get out of there. Or you can go over here to New Hampshire, and you're not going to have nearly as exciting a social life, but you will learn your craft. You will master your studies, and you will meet there a mentor who could be worth diamonds to your future. That seems to be valuable information to these families, so that's why many of them
you might want to tell the parents more than...
Oh, yeah.
More than the person themselves.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, we understand, Leslie. I mean, as you're an astrologer, too, when we're doing a reading for a young person, we're very much doing it for the parents more than we are for the child themselves. I did a reading yesterday for a 4-year-old girl in Costa Rica. You know, I just did her reading here while her father was sitting next to me. And so clearly, who knows, she's not going to get this information for another, 10, 14 years, whatever, but it was the information naturally is for the parent. And when I read for a high school graduate to be in that sense, it's always with the parents in the room listening in if they want to be there and do that. Yeah, absolutely. But it's the same combinations, Leslie, that astrologers always do. As you know, there are many countries, India pops up in particular, where people are not going to get married unless they have their astrology charts done together. So this is the same principle, whether it's a couple, whether it's a family or a business, that we are looking for advantageous places as well as for advantageous conditions of timing that affect the different people, and for things about the dynamics in their relationship.
It's good to know what your challenges might be.
Boy, got that right. Yeah, indeed. So, yes, indeed.
So if people want to learn more about astrocartography, what would be some good resources for them?
Well, the key figure for astrocartography is Jim Lewis. His last name, again, spelled Lewis. He wrote a book called The Psychology of Astrocartography. And though it's aimed mainly at a professional audience of psychologists, it does have this very valuable information in there which lists the interpretations of the different planet lines and crossings. Jim also wrote other books, which sadly are out of print. He deserves to really be much better followed than he is. So those are the main ones, and I hope I don't sound immodest in saying this, but the other books that I've seen in the field of astrocartography really are not terribly interesting, and either they are very technical in nature and hard to follow, or they are not very well written. So I'm sorry, with all the humility I can summon, Leslie, the best thing I can say is the best books about astrocartography are the ones that I'm writing right now. The first one will be available by the end of the year, and then I will be doing two others. The one that I mentioned about the astrocartography of famous historical characters, and then the other about the astrocartography of historical events. Because this is fascinating stuff. This is brand new territory where this is concerned. When I was in Egypt back in 2011, I did a reading for a couple, and the male, the husband, naturally being more skeptical, as the man always is, was asking me after I had done the maps for him and his wife, what the maps of Cairo would look like for January 25th of 2011, which, of course, your Cairo and Egypt listeners know as the day when the Egyptian Revolution began. And so I just cast a set of maps for Cairo, Egypt on that day, starting at maybe 9 in the morning, then going to 11, 12:30, 3 o'clock, and so on and so on and so on, going all through the day, and just walking them through the maps to just tell them, all right, according to this map, this is what was happening in Cairo at that time, because the lines in the map are moving all around the planet every day, you see. And so, therefore, we looked at all of these things, and after I had taken them through that day in Cairo as the maps described it, they said, that's exactly how it happened.
Yeah.
And consider the implications of that then, that different famous historical events could be reconstructed precisely through astrocartography. I mean, I am refusing as yet to cast the maps for Rome on the day that Julius Caesar was assassinated. I believe that I should accomplish some other things, finish at least the first book before I get to do that. But things like that, this event where the exact day is known when this event happened in ancient times, how we could see it unfolding during the day, and so many other famous events as well. So, yeah, and I would ask people, if you want to, just write to me personally. I'll refer you to places that are on my website. Back in the years ago when the American election of 2008 was happening, I wrote an article about the astrocartography of Barack Obama and John McCain to show why it is, according to the maps of these two men, who was going to win the election. And I mean, it was a no-brainer. Everybody knew who was going to win the election, but it was nevertheless interesting to see how it was shown there so specifically in their maps.
Yeah.
So yeah, by all means, write to me. I will.
I'll give your contact.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
At the end, I have a slide with your contact. first, Dan's books. There's a page on his website. His website is danfurst.com/books. You'll find his books, The Dance of the Moon and Surfing Aquarius. And there's also links for that on my blog if you go to that. And here's some more links for Dan. We have his website is danfurst.com. His blog is aquarianairlines.com. If you're interested in astrocartography readings, there's a tab on his website for astrocartography-readings. And if you want to email Dan, his email address is dan@danfurst.com. And you can also find Dan on Facebook. You have a profile, and you also have, I think, an astrology. Don't you also have an astrology page?
That's right. Yeah, there's a personal page just under my name. The main page that I use is Dan Furst Astrology Readings. Okay. So that's the home page basically, and I use that for things like announcing the webcast that we're doing right now. Also for and now that's one of the places where I announce, along with Aquarian Airlines and my main mailing list, that to let people know that there's a new episode of the Universal Festival calendar that's now up online. I should mention to people also, you see, that I no longer publish the Universal Festival calendar on the old Hermes 3 website. That site was retired back in February, and it still is alive as an archival site. So if you want to find anything that was created on that site during the first 15 years between 1998 and 2013, then yes, you can go to that Hermes 3 site, and there's a link to it on my danfurst.com website. But the new information, if you ever want to read the new Universal Festival calendar, then the best thing to do is go to just go to danfurst.com, look in the lower left, and you'll see a link, or you'll see an image of the Universal Festival calendar. You click on that, and it takes you to the newest one. So that's the thing that I've been doing for the longest time, and it's the way that I think that whatever audience I have is mainly connected with that, because I've been doing it for such a long time and charting in the way that a mundane astrologer does the trends and conditions on the planet as a whole. What I mean by mundane astrology rather than personal astrology is that instead of being a reading for an individual person, it shows how conditions on the planet as a whole are affected by planet alignments and activities at each specific piece of time. So the Universal Festival for this calendar for this month is called Off the Cross, and it consists of a panel discussion which is chaired by Vladimir Putin of Russia, in which Uranus and Pluto discuss with him the question, is it as bad as it looks? So that's kind of, and of course they're not going to say, they're not going to agree that it's as bad as it looks. I mean, that's the whole point of the thing, but I don't want to give it away, that we are in the position now of learning to be more proactive and understanding that history and events and things that are happening now don't just happen to us as passive receivers of what's going on. We are creating the new planet now. It's no wonder all of these authorities are so terrified. The more powerful we get, the more difficult it becomes for them. So anyway, that is where some of the new writing is, and I'll be doing a lot more astrocartography writing too. This is another place that I forgot to mention to you when you were asking people, or you were asking where would be a good place for people to learn more about astrocartography. My Aquarian Airlines blog has a set of posts that are devoted to locational astrology. And so each one tells a a story in maybe, a few hundred or 1,000 words about a person or a couple or a relationship of some kind who are using their lines, moving from one place to another or finding connection in relationship. So that's a good place to go. If you just go to aquarianairlines.com and look for some of the locational astrology pieces, you find some specific stories in there and also some things about the basics of astrocartography. So that could be a useful resource for people who want to explore that.
So check out Dan's website and his blog, and you'll get a lot more information on astrocartography. And as I said, if you want to email him, it's dan@danfurst.com. That brings us to the end of our show, and I want to thank Dan for coming. This has been wonderful, very informative. I've had two readings with Dan, and I would highly recommend doing it. They were both differently focused. They were both astrocartography readings, but the focus was slightly different. So if you're interested in how different parts of the world can influence you, I would definitely recommend. And he does do his readings over Skype. You just go to his website and you'll see the tab for the readings, and you can contact him that way. So thank you, Dan. Thank you for being with me tonight on this show.
Thank you, Leslie. It's been a great pleasure and just an honor to be with you and your audience this evening. I'm very grateful for the chance to be with you.
Well, we'll have to do it again sometime soon.
I look forward to it, yeah. I would mention just for a second that I also do readings by phone. I prefer Skype because I can record both sides of our conversation if we do that. But some people who are not Skype comfortable prefer phone, and I can also do that. If you look at my astrocartography readings page on my website, you see the different options that are available there, including reports in readings in written report form for people who prefer that, instead of getting a recording of a reading and listening to that. If they'd rather look at it on the page, they have a way to do that as well.
So you have many options.
Exactly.
So thank you, Dan, and I want to thank the audience also for all of you who are listening. As I said, I hope we'll see you next week and in the coming weeks. Thank you for coming.